Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Fox and today I'm really excited to show you my fully updated double ice stave Warden tank. I've been trying to find the best way to play a Warden tank for a while now, as I main tank. That's definitely my preference in this game, and I have tanks set up on almost every class. But I really like the idea of double ice stuff because we have high uptime on minor Brittle, which is a relatively new debuff added to the game, but an exceptionally powerful one. What I've been able to do with a very clever combination of gear sets, traits and enchants, as well as our CP nodes, so if there are certain passes we're using, I've essentially created just a kind of the perfect hybrid between controlling the flow of a fight in a room through 100% status effect uptime. Yes, I mean 100%, we're talking minor Brittle, which is 10% more crit dam, minor Chilled, which is basically minor maim, so they do less damage to you, major Breach, and even minor Breach. So usually minor Breach is limited to stand players or sword and boards taunt, which of course applies both minor and major, and usually double ice stave tanks don't have that. But we even have that as part of the build, as well as instant Immobilise and Snare. So we just shut down a room, glue it to the floor, debuff the living hell out of it, and our team could just clean up. On top of all of that, we have fantastic sustain, which is one of the biggest problems with running two ice staffs, or staves, I don't know how you pronounce that, as you don't use stamina for the most part. It's pretty much entirely magicka, so we're limited to one resource pool instead of two. But we've been able to completely fix that problem with just one gear set really, and we have insane survivability through our stats. So everything you need from a tank and then some. This is definitely the build for you. None of those boring, you have to wear Yolnacrin, powerful assault to get into any content. This build can hit anything outside of fully optimized vet trials. I've done this in normal trials, main tank and off tank, vet and normal dungeons, including hard DLC bosses, hard mode DLC bosses, vet and normal arenas. It can literally hit all content with ease. And on top of all of that, we even have a very simple rotation as well, so nice and easy to play. So what I'm going to do is break down the video into chapters, which you'll see below now, and they'll be time stamped in the description below. We're going to go through buff stats first, and then I'll show you my consumable, race and Mundus choice and preferences. We'll then go through the gear, and once I've gone through that, to kind of explain my choices, I'm going to quickly touch on how status effects work in the game at the moment, as they have been changed and with this build, so you'll have a full understanding of why the build is spec'd the way it is. Once I've covered that, we will then go into our skills and passives, and then finally our champion points. I want to show you the most important nodes to unlock, regardless of your level of champion points. And then to finish it all off, I will quickly demonstrate actually the rotation. Whilst tanks are more reactive in terms of their rotation than proactive, it still involves keeping your own personal buffs up, applying the debuffs, and then essentially taunting and healing at the correct time as well. There's a very simple rotation that you can maintain for either single target or group fights. But yeah, it's honestly, this build is so easy to play. You'll really enjoy it when you see how powerful it actually is. Let's get started with my buffed stats first of all. Okay, so you can see from my buff stats, running at 64 into health, we have a whopping 53k maximum health, 25.5k max magicka, which is huge, 17.5k max stamina, whilst maintaining 30k spell resistance and 28.5k physical resistance, which of course when fully buffed, or partially buffed should I say, from combat prayer from a healer, is going to take us very close to cap. So we have insane survivability, and whilst you might argue that 53k health is overkill, and you would be correct to a degree, you don't need to run that high really in any content, it really helps buff up a lot of our tank stats that are scaled from max health, and it also means that we don't need to block anywhere near as frequently through the clever use of heavy attacking to give us a damage shield, and just the right use of skills to shut everything down in the room. So it works really well with those stats. Now in terms of the Mundus, race and consumable choice, it is actually entirely up to you. You are not restricted to your choices here at all. So for example, if you get to the end of this video and you like the look of it, you think, yeah, do you know what, I want to get this Warden build set up, but you've maybe got a high elf Warden, for example, that's partially leveled, you could absolutely play that for this tank build. 100% you could. So don't worry too much about your race, you just want to use your Mundus to flesh out the weakest points of your stat sheet once you've got all the gear put in place on your current build. So for the most part that's going to be the Lord, which will give you maximum health, or the Mage, which will give you maximum magicka. You can also have, is it the, I can't remember which one it is now, but the one that gives you physical and spell resistance. The Lady, is it? I think that's the Lady. But either way, just choose a Mundus that kind of fleshes out the weakest point of your stat sheet. I personally went for Nord as my race choice here, just because I've always had it here, and you know, Nord is great because it offers physical and spell resistance and ultimate gen. But like I said before, don't worry too much about it. What is very useful and highly recommended is simply blue by stat food, flat food. So max health, max magicka. You do not need health recovery with this build. You do not need magicka recovery, especially as that doesn't work through block. We have plenty on the build anyway, through no real difficulty. So yeah, don't worry about any recovery, just buy stat flat food, super cheap to craft or make. And then potions, I would still go for tri-stat because they do include the recovery of all three, including stamina, which whilst we only really use stamina for bashing, sprinting, roll dodge and break free, you know, so you really don't run out of it at all. There is always still the chance in certain encounters that are quite intensive on those parts that the stamina recovery is needed, so I would just run tri-stat where possible. Failing that, just have all three of the trash pots equipped to your wheel, you know, health, magicka and stamina, and just use whatever is needed as and when. Obviously nowhere near as efficient, but definitely a lot cheaper. So that's all the race consumable and Mundus options. What we're now going to do is go through the gear. Now just bear in mind that some of the choices here you may feel are a little bit off meta, and you are right, this isn't a Yolnahkar powerful assault build. I've got that on a couple of tanks and I'm just bored of it. So yeah, this is going to seem a little bit off meta, but just trust me, this all comes together very beautifully, which you will see towards the end when we come to the passives and the skills and so on. So our first choice is Desert Rose. We are running this as our weapons and jewellery, however bear in mind that this build will be using 5 heavy and 2 light, so take note of that. We want that for the passives to help with our magicka sustain, and it really does. So that means that Desert Rose being a light set, you could potentially have 2 pieces of armour and then maybe just use the 2 ice staves. Or jewellery if you really want. Both of our sets are front and back barred, so it doesn't really make a difference how you do it. Just find a way to do it as cheaply as possible. Our second set is crafted. Desert Rose is available as a Cyrodiil set from the town of Cropsford, which is this little location just here. So like the southeast section of Cyrodiil. Alternatively, you can buy it from guild traders, although if you do restrict yourself to the ice staves, they'll probably go for about 20k I think on EU Xbox servers. The jewellery can be quite expensive though, so just as is usually the case, so bear that in mind. So why are we choosing a PvP based set for our Warden tank build? Well, mainly because every line here gives us something very valuable. I mean, literally every one. We don't have a single wasted stat here. We gain physical and spell resistance with our armor line, max health, which is obviously important, max magicka, which is definitely important, and then when we take damage, we have a 25% chance to restore 1965 magicka. This effect can and will occur every 4 seconds. This is any type of damage. If you have 4 different dots ticking on you or just different types of damage, this is guaranteed to proc, and it does very frequently, so this works through block. This set is the single best sustain set that works through blocking for double ice stave tanks that I've found today, and I've tested loads. So this is the one I've settled on. And whilst maybe other sets can give a little bit more sustain, it's just a 3, 4 and 2, 3 and 4 lines that really make this kind of, I think, a must for any Warden tank build. Every part of this is valuable, and I highly recommend that you get it. So, with regards to the weapons, regardless whether you run Desert Rose or the other set, which you may have already figured out looking at these tooltips, what you want to do on your front bar, 100%, is to run Charged with an Absorb Stamina enchant. Now this may seem weird as we're not using stamina, we don't really have any stamina sustain problems at all, but it's the physical damage that's important here. This is the only glyph to my knowledge that applies physical damage, and I will explain why that is important shortly. Charged is obviously a way to improve us landing our status effects, which for a CC build, a control tank, this is hugely important. Our back bar, which is also our staff of the Desert Rose, we have, like all tanks, and like all tanks should have, Infused and Crusher. There is really no other choice here. This, you know, just offers more for your team than any other variant. Unless you're running a very niche build, this is basically the bread and butter for any tanks on their back bar destro, and it's no different for the double ice stave build. So you may be looking at these traits and thinking that that number's quite high. Charged is 220% on a gold staff, not 440. The reason for that is that the second set we are using is Heartland Conqueror. This is a crafted set, although you will need to own the Blackwood chapter to craft it yourself, or you can just buy it regardless whether you own it or not. If I remember correctly, the crafting station is right here, although that might be Diamond's Victory actually, so I would say probably just Google it. I'm on my test tune at the moment, so I don't have this map unlocked, but basically it's a craftable set from Blackwood. So what this set essentially does for us is give us a couple of useful lines. I mean, the 2-piece for weapon and spell damage is neither here nor there, but we do gain max magicka and stamina, which is useful. It's a shame that spell damage and weapon damage isn't health, but we can't have it all. The 5-piece is where it shines though. This increases the effectiveness of our weapon traits by 100%. So basically it doubles the traits. And that is why our charged is at 440% and our infused is at 60% instead of 30%. So this means, just to demonstrate actually, that even on a gold weapon, with infused, your crusher caps at 2108, unless you're running Taurugs. Usually for purple weapons it's about 2060 I think. And then of course our status effects, our charge is 220. So, you know, 2100 reduction of physical and spell resistance is very powerful, but the moment we slap a 5-piece Heartland on, this one shoots right up to 2600. A very noticeable difference. And this is going to be 100% uptime on this along with our major and minor breach. So very, very powerful for enabling group DPS. And this is very powerful, the 440% charge for enabling our group DPS, because we're going to now have 100% uptime on the front bar at least for minor brittle, minor chilled, which is minor maim, major breach and minor breach. So everything that we need, and of course along with that all of our immobilise and snares that will just proc instantly now. Super powerful Heartland Conqueror. And because this is a crafted set, as we need 2 light and 5 heavy, you could just get 2 light as Desert Rose to save yourself some alliance points or potentially gold, and then just craft the 5 heavy across the board. We are not running a monster set here, we are running a 1-piece mythic and 1-piece bonus. So again, just like I said with your race and Mundus choice, just flesh out the weakest part of your character sheet in that area. We are running, in the case of my build, Helm of the Trainee, as this has the highest maximum health line in the game outside of Gaze of Sithis, which obviously you wouldn't run on a PvE tank. But if you feel that you need more Magicka, just run a Magicka based monster set for the 1-piece, as you'll still get just under 1100 max Magicka from that. Or anyone that gives you tri-stats. It doesn't, you know, just run what you feel you need the most. Even if it was stamina recovery, if you just find that you roll dodge quite a lot, I mean, just pick the 1-piece that really benefits you. What you do, however, want to do is have the vast majority of your build with maximum health glyphs and sturdy. A sturdy reduces the Magicka cost of block as well as the stamina cost. I still like to have reinforced on my chest, as this gives us the biggest armor gain, so physical and spell resistance gain of any piece, as chest is the biggest piece. So if you are running a bit low, even with Nord I still needed the 1-piece reinforced. You may need to go 2 or 3 pieces reinforced, so just pick your big pieces and then your small pieces have sturdy on. Or potentially you could have infused if you're running the lady to improve your, you know, your Mundus stone, giving you the extra resistance. It doesn't really make a difference how you do it. Just try and have more sturdy than anything else. But if you do need to go for some infused or reinforced based on your Mundus choice, that is absolutely fine. And the same for your glyphs. If you need to go a couple of Magicka instead of health, that also works really well. Or even tri-stat, that's also a solid option. A lot more expensive and not needed. So I don't recommend doing that. For most tanks, tri-stat is way better than the individual. However, with this tank, as we only use 2 of our 3 resource pools, I would say going for health and or Magicka is better. So our mythic choice is a ring. Now, with regards to your jewellery, obviously some of this could be Desert Rose, some could be Heartland Conqueror. You want to make sure that all 3 of your glyphs are reduced spell cost. This does way more for our sustain than recovery, as recovery does not work via block, and recovery only ticks every 2 seconds. It's a good stat, obviously, for this build, but it is not the best stat. So reduced spell enchants ×3 is a must. And then in terms of your traits for jewellery, there isn't really a meta for tanks. Obviously it's a sturdy meta for armour, but it depends on your playstyle. I alternate between arcane and healthy for max magicka and max health. I quite like swift if I'm running trials, particularly something like there's actually a couple of trials, come to think of it, where you've got to sprint quite a lot as a tank. Swift is really good. Harmony is good if you've got people that synergize well. So if you've got like a Templar healer that's always throwing shards and mystic orbs, Harmony can be powerful. Triune, whilst harder to get because it's PvP exclusive, is also solid. You've got a few choices here, so just again flesh out the weakest part of your character stat sheet. The mythic that we are running is Death Dealer's Fate. Now this is an odd choice, I understand that. I have tested a lot of different mythics, including a more obvious choice for this build, which is Bloodlord's Embrace, and this is great for sustain, but that's all it's good for. This is good for sustain, survivability, and damage. Because what it essentially does, if I read the tooltip, we gain a persistent stack of escalating fate every 2 seconds that we are in combat, up to 30 stacks max. So that's 60 seconds that this will cap out. Each stack of escalating fate increases our maximum health, stamina, and magicka by 88, but we do lose a stack of escalating fate every 4 seconds that we are out of combat. So this means that at max stacks we're going to be sat at just over 2600 times 3 for obviously our respective stamina, health and magicka, and this is insanely powerful. Considering most tank abilities scale off of either max magicka or max health, this all of a sudden means that our sustain problems, not that we really have any, are deleted basically, as we have a huge magicka pool. As we're sat at that well over 50k health, half of our abilities are going to proc a lot harder or give us more. For example, our main heal. So this is phenomenal, and you may be thinking, well, if it takes 60 seconds to ramp up, what if the fights are shorter than that, like say your trash mob fights? Well, that's a fair point, but this gives you stats when you need them. You don't need massive amounts of additional stats if you are just going through trash mobs and you're killing them in 10-15 seconds with your group. Then you wouldn't need the max stacks because those fights will be over that quickly anyway. But when you're up against a vet DLC hard mode boss, say you're doing Scale Caller Peak for the 3 achievements, which you can do with this build by the way, or you're doing I don't know, your main tanking in Sunspire for example, or Cloud Rest, those fights are obviously longer than 60 seconds, and that's kind of where you need the additional stats, and that's when you get them with Death Dealer's Fate. So yes, I appreciate this is not a very meta choice, but trust me, it works so well, and I've tried this on all of my tanks, and every one, it actually worked really well, but especially for the double ice stave build. I've just got infused on this with the reduced spell cost enchantment, but again, your traits are not set in stone at all, just pick what you need. So that's the gear choices that we've gone for there. Now before we go into the skills, I do want to quickly explain how status effects work on this build. So I'm just going to go into the relevant part of the menu, which is tutorials, and then combat, and then status effects. So let's have a look at Frost first. It's right at the top of your screens. Instant damage applies minor maim for 4 seconds. I've got major and minor confused there. Reducing the target's damage done. Whilst wielding a frost staff also applies minor brittle for 4 seconds, increasing the critical damage done to the target. So this is amazing. So not only are we reducing the damage they do to us, but we're increasing the damage that we do to them as an entire team. Brittle is relatively new to the game, but it is super powerful, and we have 100% uptime on this. Now we do have a source of Major Breach. Like most builds, Major Breach you can get from Ellie Drain, Caltrops, or if you are running Sword and Board, just the Sword and Board Taunt. That also gives you Minor Breach, which is why it is the best taunt in the game. But we don't have access to Sword and Board with this particular build, so Minor Breach is not available to us unless we were maybe a Templar. It is usually limited to stand players or Sword and Board taunts. Obviously Major Breach isn't going to be a problem. However, look at the top of your screen where it says Physical. Instant damage applies Minor Breach for 4 seconds, reducing armor. So physical damage can proc this. Now if you have a look at the bottom here, these are the percentage chances. So weapon enchants have by far the highest at 20%. And don't forget we are sat at 440% improved status effect chance on the front bar. So some of these are quite low, like single target damage over time, area of effect damage over time are quite low. But these are all going to be drastically enhanced by our front bar charge being doubly buffed by Heartland Conqueror. So this, going back to what I said before, is why we have chosen the deals physical damage and restores 354 stamina enchant as our front bar. We don't need the absorb stamina, although that is nice. But just to test it on this dummy here, if you just look above, obviously at the top of the screen, its health is 6 million. Below that you will see immediately the Minor Breach symbol. Guaranteed, this is 100% uptime. If I let this run out, and the light attack, this is guaranteed. I could do this 1,000 times in a row and this would always proc. So this, in conjunction with our Major Breach skill, which I'll be coming to shortly, means that we do, even as a non-Sword and Board tank, still have 100% uptime on Minor Breach and Major Breach, which is obviously unheard of for double ice stave tanks. So I just wanted to clarify why that is. Okay, let's have a look at the skills. So on our front bar we are running Frost Clench for obvious reasons. This is the taunt that you get, or the ability that you get from the Destruction Stuff skill line, the third ability that you unlock. This particular morph gives us the taunt, and as of update 31 will be guaranteed to apply chilled. Now it will anyway, even though the release of this video is update 30. This will do it anyway because we still have that 100% brittle. So if I do this, you will now see on the front bar Minor Breach, Brittle, Minor Maim, and the taunt. It's applied all 4 of those, and I can again just do this 100%. See there, that frozen hand is Minor Brittle, broken sword is Minor Maim, little sun is Minor Breach. So this applies them all, even without the buff that it is soon getting. And this is because it applies frost damage, and as it is a weapon based skill in the Destruction Stuff line, it procs our enchant. Very, very powerful. You definitely need to be running this. We are running Polar Wind. This is a morph of Arctic Wind, and this is not the most popular option, but I think it is way better because we give a massive... I mean, that 10k heal was based off of a few Death Dealers stacks. When we have our Minor Toughness procced, which will be 100% of the time, and Death Dealer maxed out, this is closer to 12k. A 12k heal for us with an additional 1200 over time. And with this particular morph, that same 12k healing somebody else in our team. So the reason I chose this over the more popular morph, which stuns enemies with the frost damage that you can see down here, the 1100 per second for 4 seconds, that stuns on the third tick. Because we immobilise instantly and snare instantly with this build due to the 100% guaranteed minor chilled, you actually don't need the stun, in my personal opinion, because everything is glued to the floor instantly and shut down way faster than, you know, not running Heartland Conqueror with charged. I didn't feel that was necessary, and if I can give my teammates minor toughness, and I mean, if I'm doing 12k for me and for somebody else, I'm taking 24k of healing away from our healer in a pinch, which could be make or break. I just think this is by far the best option. Everyone seems to run the other morph. If you prefer it, by all means go for it. I don't recommend it. I have the same view on this particular morph, which is first unlocked in the first skin unlocked in the Winter's Embrace skill line from Frostcloak. Most people just go for the other variant that increases the radius from 8 meters to 28 meters, giving your entire team major resolve. This is a fantastic choice, by the way. I would highly recommend that you choose that if you're new to tanking, particularly Warden tanking. However, I'm very good at still keeping this up on my allies with the 8 meter range whilst taking advantage of the minor protection buff that we get from this particular morph. I feel that by again applying an instant minor chill, which means I'm going to immobilise instantly every enemy that I touch. They're not going to be running around. My team don't need as much protection from me, and as I'm going to be healing them with Polar Wind, which is part of our rotation, by the way, again I just didn't feel that the extra range was necessary. But I can't deny that Expansive Frostcloak is the better morph. Play whichever one you feel most comfortable with. As we have slightly lower mitigation on ice staffs, I just felt that the minor protection was useful. Next skill we're running is Blue Betty. This is available in the Animal Companion skill line. Fourth ability that you unlock. This is an obvious choice as it is free of charge. It gives us 5k magicka over 25 seconds, major brutality and sorcery, which is neither here nor there, and removes a negative effect once every 5 seconds. This is a pretty solid skill, but the main reason we like this is for 2 separate passives, which I will come to shortly. This is very important. This is front barred. And then finally we are running Frozen Device, which is another skill from the Winter's Embrace skill line, which is good because we're running some useful passives here. What this essentially is our chain ability. A lot of main tanks don't like this because it is quite finicky to use compared to just Unrelenting Grip or Silver Leash. However, I think this is the best pull ability in the game, and the reason for that is it has so much going for it. It reminds me a little bit of Empowering Grasp for Necro tanks. It's just a skill that has so many different things happening at the same time that it'd be criminal not to run it. We have the ability to summon 3 Ancient Portals, which arm after 1.5 seconds. When triggered, so basically when an enemy stands in it, they are teleported to us, immobilised for 3 seconds, dealt 4375 frost damage, which will instantly apply, based on our build, minor brittle and minor chilled, which is minor maim, and afflicted with major maim, and they do stack, reducing their damage done by what will essentially be 15% for 4 seconds. And not only that, we can have 3 of these active at the same time. So this is proccing all of our status effects. Very, very powerful, super easy to use. You just point at the floor, dunk it wherever you need to, and as soon as something walks in it, they'll get sucked to your feet. All of the debuffs on them because of our 100% status effect uptime, all in your AoEs on the floor. It's just easy mode. Easy mode. Now, your front bar ult is a flex slot. You should absolutely be running Aggressive Horn if you're with an experienced team, just because this is the best and only choice for tanks in the game. Like, I don't care what your tank build is, if you're not running this, for the most part, you're doing it wrong. Major Force is 20% critical damage for 7 seconds. Not a very long window, but an experienced team will listen out for that and will dump all of their shit on the enemy, the boss, in that window. And obviously, with us giving minor brittle, this is technically 30%. And we gain a max magicka and max stamina buff for 30 seconds. However, I spend a lot of time LFGing vet arenas, 4-man arenas, and vet dungeons, and you know, this is probably going to sound a little bit negative, a little bit toxic, but there's no emotion or opinion behind this statement other than the fact that it is, from my own personal experience, DDs do not know how to stack for the most part outside of trial content. And what I mean by that is when you're random queuing, let's say you're doing your random daily dungeon, you want to do vet just to get some, I don't know, some purple quality gear to break it down for the mats. You know you're in a good team because you're the tank, you come up to the boss, you obviously taunt them, and you stand in front of them, so that all of their attacks and AoEs are all coming towards you in this direction, and your DDs will instinctively come behind the boss. You'll have one here, and then your healer will be here. So this way your DDs can take advantage of Backstabber for a big damage boost, and your healer can combat prayer once instead of once over here, once over here, once over here, because your team are all over the place. So everybody gets buffed very efficiently, very quickly. If you notice this in your dungeons, you need to be running Warhorn, because a team that knows how to correctly stack will know to take advantage of Warhorn. However, most teams, and again I apologise if this sounds toxic, but it is 100% the truth, the vast majority of content that you do outside of optimised trials, your DDs are like this. They're all over the place. They don't stand still, they're running around, they're like wasting resources. And then you've got your healer, poor guy, that's trying to combat prayer over here and over here, and obviously your uptime on your buffs from your healer and your tank will be reduced because you are not just sitting still behind the boss or stacking up correctly. I know this isn't possible for every fight, but for the vast majority of fights it absolutely is. You don't need to run around like a crazy headless chicken. This happens way too frequently, and it's very frustrating for tanks and healers whose sole job is to keep the DDs at their maximum potential DPS output and alive. Don't make it hard for them, boys and girls, they're trying to help you. So if that's the case, which you will find 90% of the time, Permafrost is a way better choice, because what's the point in giving them 7 seconds of major force if people don't know how to capitalise on that, when in actual fact this will give you better overall damage output and survivability, because it gives a lot. There's a lot of things going on here. So we do a lot of frost damage, 1400 every 1 second for 12 seconds, which is pretty huge. We're guaranteed to apply the chilled status effect, which we were anyway with this build, but if you ever swap out Heartland Conqueror, this still guarantees it, which of course will apply minor Brittle, which is still 10% more crit dam, 70% movement speed reduction, and we give major protection to our crazy headless chicken DDs that are running all over the place. So not only are we going to keep them alive much better, but we're going to do a lot of damage and CC all at the same time. I'll let you guys choose what you prefer there. Obviously Warhorn is by far the better choice. Nobody would argue that, but I found that 9 times out of 10 when I'm just random queuing for vet dungeons, this actually ends up being better for the team. I know it sounds crazy, but welcome to Pugs, boys and girls. We all know what happens. Okay, anyway, moving on. Back bar, we are of course running the ranged taunt. This is available from the Undaunted skill line. Second ability that you unlock, or third should I say. I run the stamina morph because as of update 31, this line here that says the enemy takes 4% more damage from your attacks while this effect persists will be buffed to 10%. So you can actually throw this on the boss and just do a bit more damage yourself. But the main reason we've gone for the stamina taunt is we don't use our stamina pool really at all, and even if we are breaking free and so on, we still don't empty it. So it's just nice to help our magicka sustain by choosing the stamina variant. Honestly, whichever one you use is entirely your decision. They do not be that much of a difference at all other than the extra damage. Gripping Shards is a skill available in the Winter's Embrace, second that you unlock. This is amazing for tanks, just because this is one of the few damage abilities in the game that's not a gear set that scales off of max health. So if you read that bottom line there, damage done is based on your max health and has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect. So clearly this was made with tanks in mind. I can confirm, with this build, with your minor toughness procced, which is obviously going to be straight away, and your Death Dealer's Fate maxed out, the caps after 60 seconds, this ticks for about 2100 as per the tooltip, which will obviously be higher in game. It's phenomenal. Like 2100 is DD levels of dot damage. This is our only real strong damaging skill, but it is amazing. It also reduces movement speed and has a higher chance to apply chilled. Again, we're going to apply chilled 100% of the time anyway, so that part is less relevant, but still a very potent skill nonetheless. Because we are guaranteed to apply minor chilled, we do not use this in boss fights, by the way. You will find most Warden tanks will always drop this on a boss because of the chilled chances. They won't be set at 100%. We do not need to, but for trash fights this is very powerful. I will show you that in the rotation very shortly. Third skill, which pairs beautifully with Gripping Shards, is Blockade of Frost. This is super important for this build. Obviously the Frost variant. Does very little damage, but it does do a couple of very important things for us. It procs Frost Safeguard, which is a 12k damage shield from projectiles. This is very high uptime, at least 50% of the time this is going to be up, so super powerful. Chilled enemies become frozen and are immobilized for 4 seconds. Now we are applying chilled immediately, so this means the moment this is dropped down and we swap to our front bar, instantly immobilized. We haven't got to wait for the damage over time to proc anything. It's instant. which is amazing because we're not just slowing them down, we are literally gluing them to the floor with all of these debuffs so that our DDs can just clean up. And obviously you can use your chain ability, your frozen device, to pull everything else in to also instantly be immobilized. Really, really powerful. This also procs our super powerful crusher, which of course is set at 2600 armor resistance debuff. So very, very useful. You need to be running this 100% of the time, even though it's quite expensive to do so. Razor Caltrops is our source of major breach. You could potentially run Ellie Drain if you prefer, as it's free, but I like this because it's an area of effect major breach. And because it is physical damage, it actually has a slight chance to apply the minor breach as well as major. So when I land this, you'll see major breach, the little orange sun appear, but if we're lucky, we'll see the second minor breach apply as well. I found that even on my front bar, because it is a area of effect dot, which is about 1% likelihood to proc, even with all of the resistance, the status effect improvements, I was sat at about 10% uptime. So that's why we have the stamina enchant on the front bar. But sometimes you get lucky. Like right there, for example, there we go, we've already got minor and major breach up. Major breach will just keep refreshing. You're not going to see minor too often from this, but it can happen. If you prefer, just run Ellie Drain. It applies Magic Steel, which is pretty nice, but your healer should be doing that, so I'll let you guys decide what you prefer there. I just think, as this is a CC build, we might as well take advantage of the AoE Major Breach. It's only going to be more damage for our team, so. This is available from the Assault skill line. You need to do a bit of PvP to unlock this. Third ability that you unlock just there. And then finally we have Fetcher Flies. This unlocks a couple of very nice passives for us. It doesn't really do that much damage, to be fair. The main and actually only reason we use this, apart from the passive proc, is minor vulnerability, which really helps our team out. It's just a flat 5% damage resistance debuff, so your team will just do 5% more damage. Awesome ability. You might find that you have Wardens in your group already running this, in which case I would flex this off to one of the green balance skills, and probably Fungal Growth or the morph of this, because it gives stamina and magicka regen recovery for you and your team. And when your Death Dealer's Fate is procced and you're sat at like your 25-26k magicka, this actually hits pretty hard. But you know, use any one that you like, it doesn't really make a difference. I still like to start with Fetcher Infection though, for the passive as well as for the minor vulnerability. And then the best skill, you should always run this alongside either Permafrost or Warhorn, based on the experience level of your group. This one is kind of fixed. Massive heal. This is from the green balance skill line. Huge heal. This particular morph is better than the other one for tanking. So basically the way this skill works is you dunk your ult, 6,300 health is immediately healed, and then a further 2,000 per second for everybody in the radius. The other morph, that persists for another like 2 or 3 seconds, I think, which I mean, the only time you're ever going to use this is when everybody's low health and you're just going to heal him straight back up to full, so I don't really feel the need for the other one. This one basically makes it a free ult because we generate 20 ultimate if the initial heal is used on a friendly target under 50% health. Now that doesn't say it here, but this is per target. If somebody has Bastion or Miri, if they have their Scamps or their Matriarchs as a Sork, if they have an Eternal Guardian Bear as a Warden, it's NPCs and companions and pets as well as players. If you dunk this on 4 people, say you have a bad run in Castle Thorn, you all get sucked in at the final boss, and then you all take a big hit because you're just unfamiliar with the mechanics or something goes wrong. You dunk this ult straight away, and it costs 90 ultimate, so you're always going to have this. It's super cheap. You will instantly go back up to 80 ultimate. In conjunction with the Nord passives and another passive, you're going to be basically at 90 ultimate within a second or two. So you've literally used this for free. And then you can obviously carry on building up to your Warhorn or Permafrost. So this is by far the best morph, as you're only ever going to use this in an oh shit moment when everybody is low health and your healer might be struggling or potentially dead. Which again is a lot more common when DDs don't stack, so another reason why you need to stack, guys. Make it easy for your healer, and then you get through the content faster. So yeah, highly recommend this. This is just the best option alongside either your Horn or your Permafrost. So that's the skills. Let's have a quick look at the passives now. Animal Companions, top 3. Don't worry about advanced species. You want whenever an Animal Companion skill ends, you get health, generate ultimate every 8 seconds, and stamina and magicka recovery when one of the abilities is slotted. Don't forget we have Fetcher on our back bar, Blue Betty on our front bar. If you spec it the way I have, so that's 100% uptime on that. Very, very powerful passives. You need those top 3 for sure. Green Balance has the best passive in the game, which is for Wardens, in my opinion at least, which is minor toughness. You can apply this from any heal, not just a Green Balance heal, to proc it for you and anybody else in your group if they're in range of the heal. So this works off of our Arctic heal, or polar wind, sorry, for both us and our teammates, but it also works from the passive we just spoke about, where an animal companion skill ends and it heals you. So ending is obviously the natural ability timer running out, or when you reproc it. You now see I have minor toughness. So yeah, and you can obviously just refresh this 20-second timer as much as you want. So yeah, the maturation is like god tier. It's really good for healers and tanks, and it just helps everybody, particularly since CP 2.0 came out, and most DDs are sat where they used to be at 14 to 16k, they're now more like 19 to 21k. 10% of a bigger number is a bigger return, so I just think maturation is fantastic, and I highly recommend you get this. Top 3, don't waste your time. Unless you're going to flex out to one of these skills, you get a bit of major mending, a bit of magical return, and a bit of extra healing. I mean, if you haven't got very many skill points, don't buy any of these 3. If you do have lots, then go crazy. Winter's Embrace, just like the Animal Companion, all of them apart from the bottom, unless you have the spare skill points. Glacial Presence improves our chance of applying Chilled with Winter's Embrace abilities by 200%. Admittedly, we have 100% even without this ability. I've already tried and tested. However, if you eventually swap off Heartland Conqueror, this is very powerful. Frozen Device is frost damage, which can apply Chilled. Polar Wind is frost damage. Gripping Shards is frost damage. So this is a pretty solid one. This is what is better for this is when you run this build in trials and you have another Warden in the group. The bottom line doesn't really affect us as we don't crit on this build. Enemies and allies who have recently been chilled take 10% more crit damage and healing from you. So what this means is if you are on this build and you have a stamina Bobo Warden, you know, as your DD, even though they don't have a frost staff, they haven't applied shield, because you have 100% uptime on shield, you are giving them an additional 10% critical damage 100% of the time, plus another percent from minor brittle, plus another 20% occasionally from major force from your warhorn. So this is really powerful if you have other wardens. If not, it's still good for the status effects. Frozen Armour is just a flat physical and spell resistance buff based on what's slotted, so 500 on the back with gripping shards, 2000 on the front, or what will be 1500 if we have Warhorn. Icy Aura reduces the effectiveness of snares, very very useful as a tank. Just going to save you some resources, this is nice as well. Piercing Cold is just a damage buff, don't worry about this unless you can afford it. Destruction Staff, you want every single one apart from Penetrating Magic, as the only 2 abilities that are Destro are our weakest damaging abilities, namely our Taunt and our Blockade. So save yourself, you really don't need this at all. Trifocus is god tier, by the way, god tier. It doesn't say it here, but if we read the tooltip out quickly, fully charged Ice Staff heavy attacks grant you a damage shield that absorbs 11,430 max damage, while an Ice Staff is equipped blocking costs magicka instead of stamina. So that's a pretty fat damage shield, right? 11.5k. What it doesn't say is it scales off of max health. It's now 12.5k. When you have your Death Dealer's Fate fully proc, this is 15k. And this is part of our rotation, by the way. 15k damage shield plus 53k health. You literally do not need to block quite a lot of heavy attacks from bosses, let alone anything else. Obviously, you should still block those. But my point is that this is disgustingly powerful for this build. So, and we had this on both bars. If you get caught on your back bar, don't worry about it. This is really good. Elemental Force, as we have 2 Destro Staffs equipped, this is just up 100% of the time. It does not apply to our Minor Breach, as that is not elemental, that is martial, but it's still really good for just making sure we always have Brittle, Chilled, and it can also proc Minor Magic Steal from any Magicka based abilities, such as our Fetcher Flies on the back bar. Quite a low chance to do this, but it's there nonetheless. It's about 10%, just like Minor Breach from Gale-Drops. But again, obviously your healer will be running Ellie Drain, which will give 100% Magicka Steal anyway. Ancient Knowledge is really important because it's all about block mitigation, reduces the cost of block by 36% and increases the amount of damage we can block with an Ice Staff. We have 2, so that's perfect. This is pretty solid as well. You're never going to kill with a Destruction Staff ability because for the previous reasons mentioned, but you will absorb damage using a Destro Staff damage shield because that does include Frost Safeguard from your Blockade of Frost and your heavy attack. So this just means whenever you take damage, every 10 seconds, 1800 Magicka back, even if you are blocking. Nice little sustain tool. We're running 2 light and 5 heavy. Now, I'm not going to bother going through the heavy. You should all know by now, if you're main tanks or you're interested in tanking, that every single heavy passive is just amazing. They've done a really good job with the heavy skill line. You need all of these. 100% you do. Tons of block mitigation, income and healing. Just everything is important here. So max out your heavy armor as soon as possible. Light armor, don't worry about the bottom 2. These do nothing for the build. Your light armor bonuses, we have 2. So we're reducing the damage and magical attacks by, well, 2% technically. Ignore the sneak one, but we reduce the cost of roll dodge by 6%, the cost of break free by 10%, and the cost of bash by 6%. These are phenomenal and guarantee that we do not run out of stamina on this build. Grace gives us snare resistance, another 8%, and that reduces the cost of sprint by 6%, also helping our stamina. Evocation is where it really shines though. We've just saved us a ton of stamina, which isn't the most important part of the build, it's magicka that is, but we're doing that here as well. 8% magicka recovery, 4% reduction of all magicka abilities, cost reduction that is. 4% doesn't sound like a lot, but that's more than half of the very powerful passive from the Imperial skill line or the Breton skill line, both of which are solid choices for this build, by the way. Yes, you can run a Breton tank with this build, and yes, it works. So 4% cost reduction of all your magicka abilities is incredibly noticeable, but that in conjunction with everything else we've just gone through, that is why I found that of all the different variations of heavy, light and medium, obviously starting with 7 heavy because that's usually what tanks do, 2 light and 5 heavy is just best. It works so well for this build, and it means that getting your Desert Rose is going to be a lot easier as well. So double win there. Spell warding is some nice little spell resistance on top of the build as well, nearly 1500, and then Prodigy and Concentration is spell crit. Even with this maxed out, you get barely 10%, so don't waste your time. Same for Spell Pen, not worth it. Heavy armor, obviously get them all, we already know this. And then all you really need to worry about is your Undaunted passives. Make sure you max out both of these as we're running 2 types of armor. It's a flat 4% increase across all 3 resources, and tons of synergy restoration. It's not really part of this build, but for those that don't know, they added Major Gallop as a passive now, so you should always have this from the Assault skill line. Obviously all of your racial passives, and then this is my test tune, so I don't even have it here, but you want medicinal use in the alchemy skill line, and if you can, I quite like Gourmand in the provisioning skill line, just to add some duration to your food as well, because I always run out of food mid-fight, and as a tank that's usually worse than healing or DD, so don't do that. So that's it for your passives. Champion points next. There's some really important notes here, so pay attention to this. Green tree, do whatever the fuck you want. Doesn't make a difference. The only one that's important for tanks is Steed's Blessings. You get to the next room first. These two are recommended for every build, but all they actually do is save you gold. That is it. They do not affect combat in any way. They just save you gold. Ones that are good though for gold, which is kind of what this whole one is about, is Treasure Hunter, Steadfast Enchant, Gilded Fingers, and Fortune's Favour. You've also got Breakfall to reduce your full damage. You know, it doesn't make a difference. Pick what you want, but I think Steve's Blessing is where you should start. This is actually pretty solid. Blue Tree. Okay, I'm going to show you the exact path to take here. In fact, no, do you know what? It's easy just to explain it. No, do you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, so what you want to be doing here is... This is going to be from CP0 right up to, I'm at 1100, so you want to be starting with Eldritch Insight, max this out straight away. Staving Death is next, you only put 10 into here. Now this is a defensive line, you will need all of these eventually, but you don't need it to start with, so just put 10 in here. The reason for that is you need to be grabbing Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, Unassailable. Now once you have these 3, if your resistance with Major Resolve applied, so just pop your Frost Cloak before you check this, is 28k or higher, then do not go for Bulwark. If it is 26, 27k, if you're a good player, if you're experienced and you know the content well, you can literally run most dungeons, even with the minor resolve buff from Combat Prayer from a healer at 28k resistance. You don't need to go higher, but that's only if you really know what you're doing. I like to aim for about 30k because I can be a bit of a noob sometimes, so I have a Nord, which means I didn't need this. If you're not sort of at that 28k by this point, go for Bulwark. If you are, Arcane Supremacy. This is 1300 Magicka, so this is better. And don't forget you can use some enchants to give you more max Magicka if you don't have this, or more resistance if you don't have this. So it doesn't, you know, these two are kind of very swappable based on the traits and enchants you have on your gear, but you definitely want these 3. So once you've got those 3, and either Arcane Supremacy or Bulwarks, you want to be doing all of this first. You need to be coming up to here, and only putting 10 here. We don't need the full amount here. What we're doing is maxing out next Battle Mastery, because this increases our chance to apply Minor Breach by 60%, even on the back bar. And then you come down to here, and you max the magical status effects. So again, this is particularly important if you decide to swap out Heartland Conqueror. Once you've done that, you want to come back down to here, and you want to finish maxing out all of these skill lines. So what you want to do before you finish Quick Recovery is go Preparation, because this is a flat 10% damage resistance buff versus all damage it is in PvP. And then just whichever one of these 2 you prefer, doesn't really make a difference. Anyone you want. Once you've done that, you can just finish up doing your passive. So Tyler's Discipline for the stamina. Crit chance is totally pointless. What I would definitely do is just come down here and do your healing. Done. This is really noticeable, actually. And then you're just doing the rest of your slottables. You've got a few other ones down here that can be kind of cool, I guess, but honestly, just Duelist Rebuff, Enduring Resolve, Unassailable, and then either Bulwark or Arcane Supremacy. For this particular tree, you want to be starting, as is the case with practically every build, with Boundless Vitality because you're a tank. Ironclad. Now, this is getting nerfed. As of the release of this video, it's 150, which is quite noticeable. It will be 90 as of the end of August 2021. I'm releasing this video just before that, as of update 30. So I still don't recommend this. The other two slottables that I really like are Survival Instincts, 25% flat, cost reduction to all of your combat skills whilst you're afflicted with the status effect, which even with Mystic Tenacity maxed out is still a hell of a lot of the time. And then either the fourth one, Bastion, to improve our damage shields by 15%, or the new tree that's going to be over here that I don't yet have, which will give us block mitigation for reduced movement speed. I personally will probably just go Bastion because heavy attacking fits quite nicely into our rotation. But either way, do these two first, and if you do want to do this one, go for it. So if you want to max it out, that's absolutely fine. Once you've done the ones up there that you want, you need to be going only 15 into Tumbling, only 10 into Mystic Tenacity. To start with, you will be maxing these out. The reason for that is that we now want Survival Instincts, which is just ridiculously good, and Hero's Vigor. You want to max both of these out first, starting with the slottable. Once you have done this, you're then basically just doing passives. So what I would do here is go straight to Tyler's Guardian and only put 10 in, because this is a stamina cost reduction of blocking. I'm really hoping they make this Magicka in the future as well. But what it will do is unlock this over here when it's all branched out as of update 31. But we do want to go for, I think I said fornication then, fortification first, which is 4% block mitigation. Cover your ears, children. So yeah, this is really important here because this works for your eye stuff blocking as well. And then all you're doing is you're just fleshing out your passives. So sprint speed, sprint cost reduction, finish your tumbling, complete defiance, and only once you've done all of those passives do you then want to come back to Mystic Tenacity and max this out. And then from then on just do the rest of your passives. But that's the most important route to take. I'm about 1100 as I say, so that's kind of the best route to take there. And that is it for your champion points. So the very last thing that I want to show you, let's just cancel that redistribute. Yes, please. The very last thing that I want to show you is your rotation. So let's have a quick look at the rotation. So this one's pretty straightforward. You're going to have a separate rotation for single target versus group fights, but it's not complicated. You literally use pretty much your 2 buffs on your front bar and your 3 dots on your back bar. Now we have 4 dots on the back bar. We don't use gripping shards versus bosses. So all we do is we basically swap out gripping shards in trash fights for flies in single target fights, and that's basically it. You want to follow a specific order though. So on your front bar you need to go Betty and then Frostcloak, because if you look at those timers, look how very beautifully aligned they are. If you do it the other way around, you're going to have a 2-second gap. Obviously if it's a single target fight, you're going to taunt to start with. That goes without saying. So once you've applied your 2 buffs, you taunt. What did that? Once you've taunted, you then need to do in this exact order. Always start with your blockade, then your caltrops, then your flies. This will give a very, again, aligned timer. Not quite as aligned as the front bar, but it is very aligned nonetheless. Once you've done those 3, you need to go back to your front bar and light attack. This will guarantee your minor breach proc. Once you have light attacked, you can then proc your first heal and start charging up your 2 heavy attacks to give you the damage shield. By the time this has run out, you've got time for another heal, and potentially your taunt has just about run out by this time. Once you've applied that, you can then just repeat. So let me just do that sort of live. Betty, Frostcloak, blockade, caltrops, flies, front bar, light attack, heal, heavy attack, heavy attack. I don't actually find my taunt there. Back to this bar, same repeat again. Those 3, back here. By this point, again, light attack, heal. You now notice that our Betty is about to run out, so just reapply both of those. Heal again, heavy attack. So you can heavy attack to help your resource to get your damage shield, or you can light attack to keep your minor breach up more frequently. Minor breach will proc every time it runs out basically, so don't attack before it runs out. That's why I like to heavy attack more than light attack. But I will always light attack right at the start of my front bar once everything's laid down. That's kind of the first thing that I do. Light attack, then proc the heal, and then heavy attack, because I've got a big fat heal going on me and a damage shield, which means, yeah, it's, you know, you can't die. You literally can't die. The only difference if you're fighting trash mobs is you're swapping out flies assigned to my right bumper with shards. But you still do blockade first. So same basic principle, get your 2 buffs down, swap, blockade, shards, caltrops. That's the difference. So you want to do it in that order again, just to keep your timers aligned. So always blockade first, because that procs our crusher enchant. It immobilises instantly. You know, blockade is, whilst our least damaging skill, by far the most important in terms of setting up everything that this build does. And then once you've done that, you're back to the front bar, and it's the same basic principle. Light attack, heal. You might need to use your you know, your runes every now and again to pull stuff in, so that's fine, just factor that in. But that's why on the front bar we're not doing too much. We're mostly heavy attacking and healing, because it gives us so much opportunity to do stuff like this, to pop our ult, whilst we have not only a heal on us, but a very potent damage shield as well. And then all you're doing is you're just reapplying your buffs, and that's it, your debuffs. If it is a boss fight with a load of trash mobs around him, all you've got to do is just factor in gripping shards after your blockade and before everything else. So it's still the same basic principle. You still blockade first, then you shard, then your caltrops, but you'll just throw in the fetcher flies at the end. As you can see, look at our timers at the bottom, they're still very aligned. Then you go back to your front bar, light attack, heal, start doing your heavies, and then just replace your heavies with anything that needs doing, be it a taunt, your Betty and Frostcloak combo, your ult, whatever it is. And that's it. Obviously you're going to have mechanics to worry about. I'm just talking about fights where you can keep the boss stood still so you can nuke him. That is your exact rotation there. When you're doing mechanics and so on, it's not really that different. You're still maintaining your buffs on your front and your debuffs on the back, and then just heavy attacking and healing in between to keep yourself and your team alive. So hopefully I didn't go into too much detail with that. I'll make it too complicated. This build is, honestly, it's fantastic. It really does work in vet content as well as normal arenas. And if you do have your doubts, put it together first and let me know what you think. Try and get your character sheet looking as similar to mine as possible with your max health over 50k if possible. You will notice a huge difference in your damage and survivability and sustain if you do so. Thank you very much for watching. I will do my best to respond to all questions in the comments. If you do have any suggestions or improvements or just anything at all, please do feel free to let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as humanly possible. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.